Welcome to the Maximizer Leads module. It has been designed to simplify how you record, track, and convert your leads, plus keep your address book free from clutter and focused on your customers. Here are the topics we will cover in this video, starting with permissions. As with all things Maximizer, before you can use the Leads module, you need to have permissions to play, and for that we go to Administration and the Administrator module. From there we click on Users, where the administrator can specify which users have the rights to add, insert, modify, and delete records in this module. I go to Access Rights, Modify User Access Settings, and I notice here that by default users do not have the right to delete leads from the Leads module. To change that, put a check mark right here, click Save Settings, and you will note that in order to give this person permission, I actually have to type the word delete in capital letters here, select OK, and then save again. Once this user logs out and logs back in again, they will have permission to select an entry, and then up here select delete, type in delete in capital letters, and remove that entry from the Leads module. Now I'm going to manually enter a lead so that I can give you a quick overview of how the module works. We click on New and we fill in the blanks. Let me remove Henry Jones's name there for just a moment and click Save, and you notice that if I forget to put in the last name, I'm prompted to do so. So I'll just put Jones back in there. I fill out the rest of the fields with all the information that I have. You notice that Maximizer by default identifies this lead as an unqualified lead. When I click Save, I now have Henry Jones as an unqualified lead in the Leads module. You will also notice that the creation date is completed with the month, day, year, and time that this entry was put into the Leads module. The close date will be completed when I either convert this lead or archive it. Now that I have a lead in my module, let's go back and work with that lead a bit. I can click on it and click Edit and fill in anything else in here that I missed the first time around. For example, for source, I might say that this lead came to me from an event or a trade show. When I've made the adjustments, I click Save, and I have added a bit more information to my lead, which I can verify by looking over here. My next step is to click directly on the lead name so that I end up having the opportunity to move the lead along this nurturing process here. Whereas the lead is unqualified today, perhaps tomorrow it will be new or it will be working. And of course, if I click Set Status, I lock it into that position right there. I can go backwards or forwards and click Set Status again if I change it. What I can't do is go all the way back to unqualified. So let's put it back at working and reset that status. As a best practice, early in this process, I should click on Link to see if this entry already exists in the address book. When I do that, Maximizer automatically searches the address book to see if there is a match to the contact's email address or the company name or the contact's first and last name. If there are one or more matches, I can select the best match and click OK. This lead, Henry Jones, is now linked to Henry Jones, who belongs to FGH Industries in the address book. And if I want, I could click on this link right here, bounce over to the address book, and check up on things there. When it is time to convert this lead into a customer, I click on Convert right here. By default, Maximizer makes this selection, choose an existing entry, because I have already linked Henry Jones as a lead to Henry Jones in FGH Industries. Because of the linkage, the company name, the first name, and the last name are read-only. If I now click Convert, Maximizer will stop me and remind me that I have to put in an objective and a description for the opportunity because I did not put a check mark over here, do not create an opportunity. Because Henry Jones already exists in the address book, what I want to do is create a new opportunity with him. Obviously, I'm going to be doing more business with Henry. So I proceed to fill out the objective and the description of this opportunity, and then I click Convert. After the conversion, I can click here on this linkage to go to see the company in the address book. I can click on Henry Jones to see him in the address book, or I can click here to go to the Opportunities module and start to fill in the details of the opportunity that I have now created for Henry. Now I'm going to go back to the Leads module by clicking Back to Leads, and I'm going to make a different selection this time, Sharon Jones. When I click on her entry and then click on Link, I notice that two entries have come up for my consideration. Neither one of them is Sharon Jones, but I notice that these have an email address, Helen@Maximizer, Helen@Maximizer. When I cancel out, I have Helen@Maximizer as the email address for Sharon Jones. Now I did that deliberately in this sample database just to show you what happens when we press the link button. In this case here, none of these entries applies to Sharon Jones, so I'm not going to be able to link them, so I will cancel out. This time, when I click on Convert the Lead, Maximizer correctly assumes that I want to create a new company and its associated contact. In other words, if the lead and its associated company are brand new, we can create both of them in the address book at the same time. I'll go ahead and put in the details for an opportunity, and I will click Convert. Once again, I can use this link here to take a look at the company in the address book, this link to see the contact in the address book, and this link to review the opportunity in the Opportunities module. And of course, Sharon Jones is conveniently noted as being a converted lead. Now let's take a look at importing leads from a spreadsheet by using the Import tool. As always, make sure that your spreadsheet has only one type and one piece of information for each column, and in the case of two of these columns, source and industry, you want to make sure that if you put any values in here, they match to the values that are in the same field, source and industry, that you will find in the Leads module. You can, of course, import these leads without filling in either source or industry now, because you can make that selection later after you've done the import. By the way, I can specify who will be the owner of one or more of these leads right now if I want to, but if I do this and I'm going to import the result, I will need to put in the actual login ID of the user you will be assigning to this lead rather than the display name associated with that user. The import utility will change the login ID to the display name. Again, you can leave this field blank for the import and either edit or global edit it afterwards. Similarly, if you want to assign a group of leads to a partner, you can global edit the partner field as well. By the way, when a lead first starts out, the person responsible for it is designated as the owner. But once it is converted to a real customer, then the owner is referred to as the account manager. And just as with the account manager, once an owner has been specified, it can only be changed by the person who entered the lead or by a sales manager. The idea, of course, is that even if you see a lead you wish you had, you don't get to take it away from someone else. And of course, they don't get to take over your leads either. However, since you can see each other's leads, if you're on vacation, one of your team members can take a call from one of your leads and add a note and hotlist task to that lead for you to review upon your return. And of course, if there is no owner specified, anyone can claim that lead. All right, let's close our Excel spreadsheet and proceed with the import utility. I start a new import, I select a file, and click Open. Down here under What Record Types Does Your Import File Contain? We've selected Contains Lead Information Only from this drop-down list. We keep these as they come to us, and we click Next. We make an appropriate selection from the drop-downs for these two particular items, and click Next again. We match fields through here as appropriate, and you remember that we decided that Status and Owner would not be matched for the import. We similarly decided that source would not be imported, neither would industry. We would take care of doing those with editing or global editing after we had finished the import. We specify the fields that should be tested to see if there's a duplicate, and we'll take that as the last name and first name. We'll do our checking that way. And then we'll take a look at any other field action that needs to be done. Add when empty seems appropriate. And if we want to, we can specify the field format here and finally click Next. At this point, we take a quick look at the summary as to how things have been set up. If we're satisfied that this works, we click Finish. And we notice that in this import, we only had 5 records and all 5 of them have been imported successfully. When we go back to the Leads module and click Refresh, we can see the 5 new entries that we have added to our Leads module. If you were following this carefully, you will have realized that you did not see a favorite list with all the imported leads when we were done. You might have been expecting that if you've used the import utility before, but in this case, you don't really need a favorite list, and here's why. When I scroll over here to the creation date, I can see when all of these entries were brought in. If I ever need to, I can search by this and see which entries I brought in and when I brought them in. Furthermore, I can come back over here to my status field, and if I want to, I can sort by status, see all the ones that are unqualified, which of course include the ones that I've just brought in by import. Now let's take a look at some of the other elements in the leads main controlling window. In case there is an error in any lead, you can simply highlight it, click on Edit, make any necessary changes, and click Save. If you really don't want this particular lead to be here, again, just highlight it, click on Delete, type Delete in capital letters, and click Delete here, and that entry will become unrecorded history. The mapping button will only be available to your Maximizer administrator. He or she will click on that button and identify values for the two fields there so that when you move a lead into the address book, these fields will be mapped over automatically, just like the other fields such as company, first name, and last name. Remember, however, that this is optional and does not need to be done. But if they decide to do it, they should remember the following. When they map the number of employees field, they will only have access to numeric fields from which to select a field. And when they map industry, they will only have access to single value table fields, again from which to select the appropriate field. The administrator should ensure that these two fields are available to both companies and individuals, and make sure that the field map with industry has the same items available as the leads industry field so the conversion can be successful. And again, of course, click Save when you are done. The remaining buttons are also pretty simple. You'll use the refresh button if you go from the leads to another module and then come back. This lets you update your leads list in case someone else has made any changes while you're away. Finally, clicking on Export allows you to export your list of leads to Excel in case you have to make a report to a manager who is wondering whatever happened to all those amazing leads he or she entrusted to your tender care. Now let's take a look at these two drop-down filters here. This one allows you to select your own leads or all leads, unassigned leads, or leads that have been assigned to specific users in your office. Note that I have to be set up as an owner if I want to make my choice my leads. Otherwise, I may find myself not finding and seeing all the leads I think should belong to me. That first drop-down has to be coordinated with this second one here that allows you to filter your leads by creation date and then by status. Once I make a change in one or the other of these, I click Apply to apply that particular change. And anytime you change the filter and press Apply, the list itself will be refreshed. When you are done, click the up arrow here to hide those two particular fields. 3 final notes. Most of the available Leads module fields show up in this column setup. You can't change the column setup yet, but you can change the boundary between columns. The specific fields of status and source and industry are static at the moment, but they will be customizable in a future release. And finally, you can use the quick search facility here to search for a particular lead that might be of interest to you. Click on the leads icon, enter the name, make your selection, and after you do that, the filter itself is disabled until you press the clear search button here or go into Edit and make a change on the ownership here. Now let's take a look at some of the things we can do to actually work with our leads. When you click on a lead, you bring up the equivalent of a details window for the lead. You can click on More over here to see all of the basic information, or you can click on Less to see a lead in a more simplified format. Again, if you realize that you need to change any of this basic information, just click on Edit, make the changes, and then click Save down here. When you are ready to move a lead off the unqualified spot, simply click the appropriate position where you think they should be, click on it, and click Set Status. As I mentioned earlier, you can move forwards or backwards You can't move all the way back to unqualified, but when you've made the change that you want to keep, just click Set Status, and Maximizer will remember that for you. Now let's go back to leads, and this time let's select more than one. You saw what happens when I click one lead. I make the changes myself one at a time, but when I pick multiple leads and click Edit, Maximizer automatically brings forward Global Edit and allows us to make the change or changes to that group of leads all at once. So here I can select Status, select it, click OK, Replace with, New, and click OK. Look at the warning, click OK again, and Maximizer will change all 4 of those leads from unqualified to new. Tells me up here the changes occurred. When I click on it, the 4 are brought to their status of new. And as I mentioned before, you can use Global Edit to assign a group of leads to a partner with whom you have been working. When I want to call a lead, I click on the phone number, and Maximizer allows me to go through the process of making a call this way so that I actually generate a note in respect of this call that can then show up in the incoming versus outgoing calls report in the address book. If I want to send an email to that lead, I simply click on the email address. I compose the email as I normally would, and I can include the merge fields that are available to me in the Leads module. I can then save the document in the email template library, and I can even use the templates that are available from the address book, provided that they are only using merge fields that are available to the Leads module. When I'm done, I click Send. Putting check marks in these boxes down here ensures that a copy of the email will be saved and associated with the lead. I can also use the Outlook integration to save an email that a lead sends back to me, and I can even use that integration to create a lead based on a received email. The same way I can create an entry in the address book from a received email. For our next stop, we'll take a look at entering notes, documents, and activities into the respective widgets in our Leads module. If I want to write a note, I click the Add button, I type out the text of my note, and I click OK. Before I do, you'll notice that I get to keep track of all the usual things, the date and time stamp that goes with it, the creator, the full access, etc. I'll click OK, and that note has now become part of my record. And the down arrow here allows me to either edit or delete the note that I'm looking at. Finally, I can click on the note itself to expand it and read the full text that goes with it. In my Activities widget, I can click this plus button to add an appointment or a task. If I choose to add an appointment, I will be able to invite other users and other leads, but I won't be able to invite address book entries, and I'll click Save. In the Calendar module, the pop-up for an appointment with a lead allows you to flip back into the Leads module. And in this case, back in the Activities widget, the drop-down arrow over here allows me to mark this appointment as complete or allows me to delete it. If I choose to add a task, the same Hot List Task dialog box comes up that I'm most familiar with over in the address book. I make my usual choices as to when I want to do something and what I want to do, and I click OK. Again, the drop-down arrow over here allows me to mark this task as complete, and it also allows me to delete it. The tasks and appointments created for leads are displayed in the Hot List module. You will notice that the name column now includes an entry type icon to indicate whether the associated entry is a lead or an address book entry. And up here, there is a View in Leads button to retrieve the leads associated with the appointment or task. Finally, you can also add documents to a lead. As you would expect, I click on Add, and this kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? I can browse, select a document, click OK. I can check over here on the drop-down arrow to delete that document, or I click on Properties if I want to amend any of the elements associated with that particular document. When I have finished adding all the elements that I want to for this particular lead, I can use the up or down arrow to move to the next ones in my leads list, or I can simply click back to Leads to return to that list. Now let's take a look at linking leads to address book entries. When we were doing the overview earlier and clicked on a lead, you probably noticed that there are 3 buttons over here that we can play with. The Link button lets us link this lead to an existing entry in the address book, while the Convert button lets us connect a lead to an existing entry or create an entirely new entry. And we'll take a quick look at Link first. When you click on Link, Maximizer automatically searches the address book by email address or company name or first and last name to see if it can find a match. If address book entries are found, they will be displayed. If no entries are displayed, but you still think one might exist, perhaps spelled a bit differently, or if you want to link this lead with some other entry, you can input the name or names and initiate the search yourself. You can also filter your search to only consider what we now call starred entries. These are entries that used to be considered leads in the address book module and were characterized by a red star next to the entry type icon. If there is already a contact with the name of your lead, you can link this lead to that contact, and when you later click on Convert, Maximizer will create a new opportunity for that contact. If there is already a company with the same name as you entered for your lead's company name, but no existing contact, Max will let you create a brand new contact for that entry when you do the conversion. Notice that if that is the case, you do not need to fill in all the details for the lead, such as address and so on. When you convert that lead to a new contact, that contact will automatically inherit all the basic information from the parent company entry. If I do link this lead to an existing contact and click OK, the name of the address book entry to which it is now associated will be shown right up here. And clicking on this link here will take you to the address book module and show you the entry. Once we've looked at linking, the next thing we look at is converting company and contact leads. The Convert button over here allows us to convert a lead to customer status in the address book and create an opportunity at the same time if we want to, regardless of the current status of the lead. When you do convert a lead, all the notes and documents associated with the lead will be copied to the contact in the address book. Thereafter, the lead remains in the Leads module but is a read-only item, and tasks and appointments associated with the lead will remain associated with the lead. Let's do a couple of conversions so you can see how this works. For our first example, James White is already a contact associated with E.C. Williams Manufacturing. When we click on Convert, Maximizer assumes that we do want to associate it with an existing entry. In this case, if we wanted to create an opportunity at the same time, we would simply fill out an objective and description, and we click Convert. Maximizer now identifies this lead as a converted lead, and here again we can click on this link to go see the company in the address book. We can click on this link to see the contact, and we can click on this link to see the opportunity in the Opportunities module. For our next example, let's take a look at George Willoughby. This time when we click on Link, we find that we can link to FGH Industries, which is the company that George works for, but we do not have a contact named George that we can associate him with. So what Maximizer would allow us to do this time is to add a new contact to this company called FGH Industries. So I will select that, I'll click OK, and now up here we will see that George Willoughby is associated with FGH Industries. When I now click on Convert, you'll see FGH Industries, George Willoughby, and again, we can specify the objective and description for the opportunity and click Convert. This lead has now been converted, and we see over here the link to the company, the link to George, and the link to the opportunity. Finally, let's take a look at Clarence Wilby. Now in Clarence's situation, if we attempt to link, we'll find out that there is no company or contact that we can link him to. Consequently, when we come to convert, we'll have the chance to create Clarence as a contact with a new company called Acme Tools. We'll skip the opportunity at this point and simply click Convert, and now we have Acme Tools and the contact Clarence associated as our converted lead. Let me go back to leads for one more little thing. Heather has not yet been linked or converted. Let's assume I skipped the link process and I just went to convert. Maximizer is going to assume that I want to create a new company But what if I want to test to see if she does exist, if I just overlook that step? I can click this radio button here. Maximizer does not automatically search for a connection unless I click search. When I do that, I find that, Pacific Rim Exports does exist. That's where Heather belongs, so I can click on here and click OK, and this will now end up converting her as a contact with that particular company. One other thing to note, it's possible that you might end up seeing this when you click on convert, and you might think that you're missing something. Simply allow the program to scroll up to get to see create new company or choose an existing entry. Now also in the case of this one with Pacific Rim Exports, it looks like Maximizer wants to actually create a duplicate of this with that person as a contact in it. In point of fact, it has recognized that Pacific Rim exists, and it's going to add Heather as a contact in that. If you want to be extra sure about that, select choose an existing entry, ask for the search, find Pacific Rim, select it, click OK, choose not to do an opportunity at this point, click convert, and either way, Maximizer will now have Pacific Rim Exports with Heather Stanson as a contact associated as part of our converted lead process. Now we'll take a look at a variation on a theme by considering how we can convert individual and contact leads, having handled company and contact leads. Sandy Keystone is an unqualified lead. I'm going to click on her and I'm going to check my link. When I do that, Maximizer does the check for me and doesn't find anybody that I could link her to. Let's go ahead and set her status as new and decide to convert her. Over here, it looks like I want to create a new company, but there's no company name, just a contact. That doesn't make sense. I come over here and choose an existing entry, perform the search again, still not finding anything, but I know her sister is an individual in our database. So I put the last name in, I search, there she is, Patricia Keystone. So I click Patricia, click OK, and now look what I see. Choose an existing entry, an individual, and Sandy as creating a new contact. I'll skip the opportunity for now, and I'll go ahead and click Convert. Now I have Sandy Keystone associated with the individual Patricia Keystone. There's her as a contact, and yes, she is converted, and had I created an opportunity, I would have a link over here to that as well. In this case, if Sandy had not been associated with Patricia, I would have gone through the process of converting Sandy into her own individual. To show you how that happens, I've gone back into Leads and created a new lead called Rebecca Santana. I'll click on her, bring up our dialog box here, set her status as working, and then I'm going to convert her. And you'll notice the first thing the Maximizer thinks I want to do is create a new company with Rebecca as a contact, but not so. What I want to do is create her as an individual. I get her up here, and Maximizer gives me the option of creating a new contact with the same name. There are certain circumstances in which this might make sense, but for the simplicity of what I'm trying to show you right now, I'll click here, do not create a contact, and again I'll just click here, do not create an opportunity. I go ahead and convert. And now I have Rebecca Santana converted as an individual, shows up here as a converted lead. When I click on her, we go over into the address book, and there she is, Rebecca Santana, as an individual. Now let me discuss briefly an interesting variation on this. Let's assume that you are selling medical supplies, and you met Dr. Phil Nelson and his assistant Jennifer Reynolds at a medical trade show. She is a clinical assistant to Dr. Nelson and does the buying for him. This means that the principal connection in your database is probably going to be Dr. Nelson, but currently Jennifer will be the lead for your anticipated sales. Now theoretically, I could import these folks into my leads module, and then I could create a new individual as Dr. Phil Nelson and replace the information as a contact with the information for Jennifer Reynolds. That might look something like this. I click on Phil Nelson, I click on Convert, I create a new individual, and instead of Phil's name down here, I put in Jennifer Reynolds. In effect, what I'll be doing is creating Phil Nelson as the primary lead in my database, but his assistant Jennifer will be associated with him. Unfortunately, in this case, Dr. Nelson will be considered as the lead, not Jennifer, and that could be confusing as you move through the sales process. you are probably better off to create Phil as an individual in the address book and then connect the contact Jennifer with that individual. That way, the correct lead, Jennifer Reynolds, will show up as the lead because she's the one that I would put in the leads module and then convert her over to being a contact associated with Dr. Phil Nelson. Furthermore, the information from the individual will be correctly copied down to the contact as it was from a company to the contact as we discussed earlier. Now, of course, if Dr. Nelson is the real lead, then doing the two entries at the same time could make sense if all you wanted to do was keep track of his assistant at the same time that you're working with the lead. In that case, when I click Convert, I will end up with the related entries of the individual Phil Nelson and the contact Jennifer Reynolds. This will show as a converted lead, and I can flip over to the address book and see Phil over there, or I can see Jennifer when I click on her. There she is as a contact, and there she is associated with Dr. Phil Nelson. We are in the home stretch now, and there are several important things I want you to remember. If a lead is linked with a company, you can create a new contact for the existing company and a new opportunity. If the lead is linked with an existing contact, you don't create a new address book entry. When you bring them forward and convert them, you simply create a new opportunity associated with that contact, who is in turn associated with that company. When a lead is linked with an address book entry, the data in the address book entry will not be overwritten by the data in the lead, but the notes and documents in the lead will be copied into the address book entry. After a lead is converted, it becomes read-only. You'll notice I no longer have an edit button that allows me to change anything here. The associated address book entries and the opportunity will be displayed as links. You can click on that link, pop over into the Opportunities module, and start the sales process quickly. Let's click on this for an example. You will notice that we're now in the Opportunities module, but you'll also notice that basically we've only got the bare bones of an opportunity started. We have the objective, the description. We notice that we're in progress, but that's about all we've done. Having created the opportunity, our next task is to go and fill out all the rest of these fields so they make sense, and then to continue to pursue that opportunity to a successful conclusion. And remember what I said earlier? Until conversion, leads are associated with an owner, but once you convert them, they are associated with an account manager. Now we'll take a look at those leads that refuse to be converted and kind of have to be set aside and archived. Let's assume that Henry has been one of those leads that we've been able to get him started, but we just haven't been able to get him to make a decision to move forward with us, and consequently we have to kind of move on. What I'm going to do is click on Archive so that I can take Henry and kind of set him to one side, and the only thing I have to do here is add a comment about why the lead could not be converted. I write in whatever is appropriate and I click OK, but I take note of this little comment here as well. The lead cannot be edited after it is archived. I'll click OK, and he has now been converted into an archived lead. When I go back to the Leads module, I can come over here and click my drop-down arrow, select this year, and over here under Status, I can select Archived Leads, Apply, and that gives me a chance to see all the leads that have been archived so far this year out of all the leads that have been available. That might be important to people who are in marketing and otherwise want to keep track of why some leads do not convert over. Let me scroll over here. You'll notice there's a close date which represents the month, day, year, and time that that lead was archived. Similarly, for all the converted entries, you'll find close dates documenting the month, day, year, and time when they were converted. There is one other important by the by. Generally speaking, leads get handled on a one-by-one basis. While you can global edit the status on multiple leads at the same time, global edit is not available for link or convert or archive. If I click on Helen Florence here, for example, link, convert, and archive can only be used one entry at a time. Similarly, you cannot assign tasks to multiple leads at the same time, either directly or through action plans as you can in the address book. Now, sometimes an archived lead will resurface for one reason or another. When that happens, instead of re-entering that lead, I can simply unarchive it. I click on the archived lead, and then I click up here on Unarchive. The status is now set as new, and all the notes, documents, and activities previously created for the lead will be visible. Now let's take a look at starred entries. This will be new to new users of Maximizer, but in a way very familiar to those of us who have used Maximizer for some time. For starred entries, we go back to the address book. Remember that old way of identifying leads in the address book? You go to Default Key Fields, and you look over here to what used to be called a leads entry. You could click on this field, and you could click Yes, and a star would be added to the entry, signifying that it was a lead. When we created the new Leads module, we kept that facility, but now it lends itself to a different purpose. Instead of referring to them as leads, the former functionality has been renamed to starred entries. This allows you to visually identify important entries in the database, or perhaps the primary contact in a company. For example, I've just starred Acme Tools because it has become very important to our business. And at the same time, let's star Clarence. Turn him to a yes and click Save, because we expect to do a lot of business with our principal contact at Acme Tools, who happens to be Clarence Wilby. And you will see his star up here in the main address book window. When I hover over here, you'll see the stars there as well. And also when I click on the contacts window, you'll see stars for both of those entries there as well, both the company and the contact. Now if things change, I can always go back to the default key fields, to the starred entry, double click to bring this up into edit mode, and change this over to a no, and click Save, and now that star has been removed from Clarence's record. By the way, if you're using the former method of tracking leads in the address book, you can continue to do so, since your existing leads will not be migrated out to the new Leads module. So either way, you have a utility and facility here that can be very, very useful. And now for our final segment, we're going to take a very quick look at reporting in respect of the Leads module. First of all, as I showed you earlier, you can click on this button that will allow you to export your leads to Excel and use that as a report to whoever needs it. And remember, as with exporting to Excel elsewhere in Maximizer, your column setup here becomes the header for the Excel spreadsheet. Second, if you click here so that your calls are recorded as call notes in Maximizer, in the address book module, your calls will be included in the incoming versus outgoing calls report, which might be kind of important when you're trying to stay on the good side of your manager. And finally, your notes, tasks, and appointments will show up in the consolidated activity report that you can access here from the address book module. Well, there you go, folks. A new way to manage leads and keep the address book clean and available for the real entries that matter, your customers. Bye for now.